My name is Mr. Sandoval, and you either found this video because you are one of my graphic design students, or you stumbled upon this on YouTube and decided to look for yourself how you can design your very own font that you can use. As you can see over here, we have some examples for my previous students. This is me typing on my own font. We have Strawberries Wilds as an example, where every single character looks like a strawberry. And then underneath here is a second student example of someone inspired by a Nightmare, calling his font Nightmare 2.1. So that's the plan, is to make a font that you can actually use to type. If you want to see a couple more examples, you can see a few from last year's Chrome Hearts font. And we also have one that's made out of shaving cream, which is a pretty cool approach to it. This is an incredibly dense video. It's going to be a very long one, and I'm planning to post timestamps throughout the video in case we've already gone over a part in class, and then you can fast forward to another part that's more relevant to where you actually are. But for the sake of the entire education part, I want to include these steps from start to finish. What you're going to need is Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and we're going to be using a website called GlyphrStudio.com. So we're going to be using those three components, as well as a piece of paper and a Sharpie to create our first drafts of our fonts. Going through the steps. In class, I've already gone over these slides with you guys, considering how exactly are you going to be inspired to create your font. It's going to really come down to this over here. Do you want to create a serif font, a sans serif font, a decorative or display font, or a script font? Like I said, I've already gone over this stuff in class, so if you're a little bit confused, take a look at these different type classifications and see which one you would like to design yourself. I've asked you to brainstorm 5 different font ideas by hand. Now, you've either done it on this digital sheet that I've given you. I've printed it out, this font planning sheet. So if you've done that, you've probably made a couple designs like this. And ultimately, what we need is for it to be Sharpied as clean as possible. See, these markings over here might interfere with our with the editing process. So as clean as possible. If you're around this area over here, shade everything in with Sharpie. Try to get it as perfect as possible. That way we have less hiccups. So this is more or less what I'm looking for. You're also welcome to, some people like to use Procreate or Adobe Fresco or Notability to craft out their fonts using your Apple Pencil. We have all the capital letters, the numbers, and the symbols. We're gonna skip the lowercase letters because what I'm gonna ask you to do to save some time is you're just gonna copy and paste the capital letters and scale it down to halfway to the X height. So definitely keep this in mind as you're drawing out your letters. There's a few ways that you can get this onto your computer if you're doing this by hand. One way is to take a picture with your phone or your iPad. You can scan it on a professional scanner. There's also an app called Adobe Capture, which you can download, and it'll link any photos you take on Adobe Capture directly to your Adobe Creative Cloud account. And there's also, I believe Notability has a scanning feature built in, which might also be a useful option. You can then either Gmail it to yourself, upload it to Google Drive and download it. You can airdrop it onto your iMac. Whatever you got to do, just get this file with a very clean image, good lighting, onto your computer. If you're somebody who's interested in creating your font on your iPad using an app like Notability, Adobe Fresco, Procreate, or some other drawing app, there's a couple things I want to mention. First up, it's super important that you choose a vector brush. Using a pixel brush can risk low resolution when you transfer your drawings over to Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, so make sure that you create with a vector brush, not a pixel brush. Second,
You see over here, this student, they used some lines in Notability. It's a grid background. You cannot use this. You have to turn your grid off so you have no lines in the background and it's just your pure character design. An Illustrator is going to think that these horizontal lines are actually part of your letters. So please turn that off so it has a pure white background against your characters. If you're somebody who created your font on the iPad, and you've already sent it over to the computer, go ahead and drag your image to Adobe Photoshop. Go ahead and skip until 10 minutes and 45 seconds in the video where we're all going to reconnect at the end of Photoshop, getting ready to transfer into Adobe Illustrator.
Once you've finished that up and we've gotten an image of this onto your iMac, we're going to first open this up in Adobe Photoshop. I'll drag and drop that onto the Photoshop icon and we'll let that pop up by itself. What we're going to be doing here is cleaning up our letters and our characters. Let's start off by using the crop tool C. That is right over here. We're going to be pulling this into only the areas that we need because we don't need the background table. All right, and then when you're happy with it, you can click the check mark over here or click enter on your keyboard. Now, in Photoshop, it's really important that we work in what's called a non-destructive editing. In case you mark up any of your document, it's going to be a permanent decision onto your layer. I'm going to click Command Z to get rid of that. And on the layers area, click Command J to duplicate this. I'll rename this to original, and then I'll rename this to duplicate. Go ahead and click Command L on the duplicate layer, and it's going to open up what's called the levels adjustment layer. And what's really cool about this is it helps the whites to be more white and the blacks to be more black, doing those settings that I just showed you right there. You're going to pull it in to about where you think it looks the best, where most of those markings of the paper is gone. And you can click OK when you're done and when you're happy with it. Next up, we're going to zoom in and we're going to try to clean up some other areas using what's called the brush tool. Click the letter B for the brush tool or find that on the side over here. Make sure it's not the brush mixture tool, but it's just the brush tool. And we're going to be flip-flopping with how we're painting. So if I click the foreground swatch over here, I want to make sure that's pure black. And I can flip that with this little arrow and make sure that this one is pure white by dragging that to the top left corner and click OK. To switch between these two, I can either click these arrows back and forth, or I can click the letter X on my keyboard for a shortcut. And then to control the size of your brush, use the brackets that are just to the right of the letter P on your keyboard to make them smaller or bigger respectively. And the goal is to help fix any imperfections. So with the white brush, I can paint over that. And let's click the top left brush over here and make the hardness to 100%. And then I'm just going to go around, look at all my letters for any other imperfections that I might not want on my final font design. While we're here, let's check out the magnetic lasso tool. How this one works is it tries to detect contrasting pixels. So it actually saves me a little bit more work in this particular case because it's doing all the work for me. And it helps that I already have a very clean background. So that way it makes detecting the contrast work like a charm. B for the brush tool. Let's paint inside here. I still have my visible marching ants, which are my selections. So Command D deselects. It might be also that you have a letter that you want to fix in its rotation. We can also take the lasso tool, make a circle around it, and using the Command T shortcut brings up the transform tool. From here we can actually move this anywhere we want, We can also rotate. We can scale it up, scale it down by dragging the corners. If I hold Command, I can also skew and warp the letters, clicking Enter or Return on your keyboard, or this check mark up here makes that a permanent decision. Command D deselects your selection. What we see over here is just the background from the original file. I can hide that by closing this eyeball, and there you go. I'm going to click Command Z a couple times because that's actually not what I want, but that is a very useful tip. All right, so let's go and clean up what we can and find any extra specks. All right, so from here we have cleaned up our entire Photoshop file, and I want you to make sure you save that. So click File, Save As, Save to Cloud Documents in case you need to work on this at home. And we'll call this something else. Type clean up in Photoshop and click Save, and we'll save that to the cloud. If you're a student who didn't do the handwritten on paper and you did it in Procreate, Adobe Fresco, Notability, or some other digital iPad app, this is the point where we're going to be getting caught up with those who have done the handwriting. All right, next up, we're going to be opening Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to click New File to create a new document. We're going to be working, and we could just do RGB, that's fine, at 300 ppi. We're going to click Pixels, and we're going to do 2048 by 2048. We'll click Create. Right away, let's click File, Save As, and we'll save this cloud document, Font Design Project, and click Save. If we click Shift-O for the artboard tool, we are going to expand it horizontally, not vertically. Next, we want to make some guides. So we did Command R to turn the rulers on. I'm going to be dragging down from the top my first guide. Let's do the baseline at 1550 pixels, which is obviously going to be kind of hard to find. If you go to the side and you zoom in, you can eventually find the 1550. But we could also do, notice how these numbers change over here. 1000. We'll enter into the y-axis and see if that works. That looks pretty good. All right. Yeah, right on. Nice. Okay. So let's drag, that's for our baseline. Let's drag another one down. And for the X height, we're going to do 508 pixels, enter. And then for the cap height, let's drag another one down. We'll give this one 168. For the cap height, click enter. Let's highlight these over here. We can right click and we'll click on lock guides so we don't accidentally move those. Over here, just title this guides for that layer. And we'll create a new layer over here. Do alphabet. All right, so now we're going to be shifting back and forth between Photoshop and Illustrator. A quick way to do that is Command Tab on your keyboard, and it lets you toggle between applications. Okay, so what we're going to be doing right now is dragging this entire row of letters. We can do this with the marquee tool by just making a selection around everything. I did pretty good actually with the cutoff over here of the T. I can hold Option and the minus symbol comes up, and I can actually take away that part of the selection so that the T doesn't interfere with this next step. because the Adobe programs work so nicely together, I can just click Command C to copy this entire row, go back over here, and I'll click Command V to paste this in here. Drag the corner up by holding Shift. Just keep on dragging. It looks like we're going beyond our intended area. We'll click Shift O and we're going to expand the artboard this way and this way. So from here, we should all have at least one row of letters inside Adobe Illustrator, and follow these steps. Window, image trace, and we want to click this entire, make sure this whole thing is selected in our alphabet, and we're going to click a preset for a black and white logo. Mode is in black and white, and then we're going to click the down arrow for the advanced options, and we absolutely need to make sure that this is checked on, the ignore whites. We want to ignore all of our whites, and we can zoom in and play with the threshold and see how that changes the way that Illustrator is going to be reading what you did. If we have the less paths, typically the better. Less corners maybe. This might be different based on everyone else's individual needs and goals. Play around, find what you think works best for you. And before we click expand, let's go to this manage presets button over here. We're going to save this as a new preset. Font vector project, template. Click OK. And now we're going to click expand. Let's set this to the side over here. If I click this whole entire thing, I want to do object, ungroup, and I'm going to do it a second time, object, ungroup. Don't ask me why we have to do it twice, but that is part of what we got to do. Click window, Pathfinder, and let's put that on the side as well. We want to highlight the whole entire letter and click this very first one to make it a compound shape. Now that that's been made into a compound shape, we can see that the effect is right because we're able to change the color of it. Okay, so go over to the B. Oops, let's not make that white because it's going to get a little bit lost and might get confusing. Let's go over to B, click and highlight the whole entire letter B, and we're going to click unite or make a compound shape. And the reason why we're actually doing this is exemplified here with the I. This is separate. By highlighting both the dot and the stroke down here and making that a compound shape, it unites the two. So now the I is as one. All right, so that is one row done. This is a great time to click Command S on your keyboard to make sure that this work has been saved in case somebody kicks the cables underneath your computer and your iMac randomly shuts off for one reason. It's a great time to save your progress. Let's highlight everything. I'm going to drag that straight up, go into Photoshop, and we're going to use the lasso tool or the marquee tool to get our next row into Adobe Illustrator. Command C, and then we're going to toggle over here, Command V, and we're going to do the same exact step as before. Line it up on the baseline, hold Shift, drag that up. Go into Image Trace, find your font vector preset, click that, click Expand, Object Ungroup a second time, zoom in, highlight the O, and then make that a compound shape. we're going to do this for every single letter, every single character, and once you've done the entire row, you're going to highlight all of it and scoot that up just like you see over here, and move on for all of the other characters. Okay, so we've repeated this process for the entirety of all of our letters and symbols. Now might be a good time to clean up any mistakes that you have, or if there was an issue with the image trace that came out a little bit wonky, like you see in this case over here. I'm gonna fix the rotation. And then there's a couple tools I'll show you. With the white direct selection tool, click that. And here you can click on any anchor point, move it around, as you should be familiar with right now. But of course, that's going to take a long time to do. So instead, I will show you by clicking the toolbar, the edit toolbar button, these three dots down below. And we'll first look for a pencil that's got this squiggles through it. It's called the smooth tool. With the smooth tool, we can draw through our area, our points, and it should help to smoothen things out. And then let's come down to these points over here, see if that has any help. We've highlighted them with our smooth tool, and we can drag this to smoothen that area. Next step is to go through all of your letters and symbols and numbers and smoothen out any mistakes you have. So we're getting ready to finish up our work in Adobe Illustrator and transition to the final program, which is GlyphrStudio.com/app.
The instructions I'm about to provide you in this video tutorial are taken directly from GlyphrStudio's help page on their website. If you want to find it yourself, you can go to GlyphrStudio.com/help/tutorial, and you'll find the exact step-by-step written instructions that I'm about to provide you. And if there's ever any updates that they have in the future, which I'm sure they're going to make some updates, you can go to this exact website link to find any future updates.
Once you have a great name that matches your font design, you can go ahead and click Create a New Font from Scratch. And this is going to be our final interface of where we're going to be working. Let's go back to Adobe Illustrator, and there's some settings I want you to double check to make sure that they're on. Settings, and just click General. Look for clipboard handling, and we want to make sure that Include SVG code is selected on, just like that. So in case it's not on, make sure that checkbox is on. Then we're going to zoom in over here, and let's highlight our A, Command C to copy it. We're going to go over here, and we'll find the lowercase a first, and then if we do Command V, GlyphrStudio wants to click Allow. If we do that, then we see our letter A is now inside this program over here. It's copied the code from Illustrator, and it's pasted that into GlyphrStudio. Let's click Panel, Guides. We want to see our X height, we want to see our cap height, and yeah, we want to see all this stuff. Let's click those to be on. And I think we should show labels. Some guides? No, we don't need custom guides. Just the key metric guides. Let's share with you guys how to move around. Just like in Photoshop and Illustrator, holding spacebar lets you toggle around the area. I'm going to zoom in. I've got I've got one of these guys, a trackpad, so I can zoom in with my fingers, but if you don't have that, the bottom right over here, you see the plus symbol to zoom in. And what we want is the top of our lowercase a to go to the X height. We click the mouse and we hold shift, we can drag that up, but you'll notice that the A got lost. The white part of the A is being read as a separate shape. So I'll click Command Z to revert back, and Command V paste in your character. Now notice over here it says pasted two shapes. That's referring to the black and the white, which is the inside part of the lowercase letter A. With GlyphrStudio's selection tool, I can either click the letter A and hold Command and click the inside, which is the white part. And then from here, I can hold Shift and scale it down or scale it up as I please. Likewise, I should also be able to click Command A, and that highlights both the black and the inner white. And then again, I hold Shift while I either drag up, if it's a capital letter, to the cap height, or I drag it to the edge of the X height if it's a lowercase letter. And the goal is to get our letter as close to the bottom left as I can and touching the edge of the X height over there. It looks pretty solid. Maybe I'll even edge this down using the down arrows so I get to the bottom part of the baseline. Maybe to the left a little bit. I'll once again click Command A, and using my arrow keys on my keyboard, I'll nudge it to the left until we get to this left bearing. The bearings are these left and right edges over here. Their starting point can be 50, and why this is important is because it's actually how we, it's kind of like kerning. It's going to play a part in how close each character is to the next character when you're typing it. More on the bearings later on in the video. Let's continue what we're doing now, and I'll click this again, hold Command A to select the black and the inner white, Command C. We'll click Editing, go to our capital A now, and Command V. Hold Shift, oops, I lost that, Command A again. Hold Shift and drag the corner to the cap height. The bearing, I'll set that as a default to 50, and we can adjust that later on. And then we want to go back to Adobe Illustrator, and using the selection tool, I'll click and highlight the entire letter B, Command C to copy it. Let's go back to GlyphrStudio, find our B column, and Command V to paste it. Oops, looks like I just pasted the A. In order to fix this, let's delete this, and over this little clipboard with the X should clear any previously copied clipboard materials. So click that, let's go back to the B, highlight it, Command C, go back over here, Command V, and we should have our B pasted there. Looks pretty good. And for capital B, we want to make sure that this goes to the cap height, and then we'll fix our bearing on the right to averaging 50. Oop, that's not going to work. So let's try it over here. You can also click the advanced width over here. It sets it to auto, but you do want a little bit of spacing. But that'll be for you to play around with later. Let's go back over here. Command A selects everything. Command C copies it. Switch back to the lowercase b, and Command V paste this in. So this is going to be the workflow for the next part. You're going to get to a point where you're going to have some floating glyphs, such as the I, the J, and then let's see, where else might we see this? The equal sign has got different parts. The colon, the semicolon, there's your floating glyphs, quotation marks, the question mark, the swoosh and the dot down there. So keep all this in mind. If we go ahead and copy the percent symbol, and we go ahead and find that somewhere. Here it is. Command V, should paste that. Oops, forgot to clear my clipboard. Clear that, delete the B. Command C, Command V, and here it is. We'll scale that up by holding Shift. We'll take it to the cap height. We'll drag our bearings to the side over there. So yeah, keep that in mind, that this is all separate stuff. And click the black, the positive space, hold Command to select the negative space, and then they're both selected. We can move those around one final time to the location that best suits our design preferences. So yeah, that's going to be our workflow for the entirety of all of our characters. We're going to do this for every single character, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. You're going to come to a point where you've done enough for today and you want to save the project for tomorrow. Click File, Save Project File. And what's going to appear in our downloads is this .gs2 file right here. We can go back into the website and we're going to click Load, and we're going to open the file that we just downloaded, which is this one, the .gs2 file. Click Open, and then all of the progress that we have done thus far has been saved.
In the settings page, you can change your font project name here, and that's going to change how your font is named if you save this project. But if you want your final font title to be different than how you first started it and you thought of a better font name, click Font, and this is my last chance to rename my font.
All right, guys, so we have gone through and added something to every single character. Is now filled with what we copied and pasted from Adobe Illustrator. So this is a great time to click File, save this project. That way you can save your hard work progress here. Now here's a few other things that I want us to keep in mind. We go back to our typography slides, and at the very bottom, let's see over here. Remember, the X height is where the lowercase goes to the top and everything starts at the baseline, and make sure that any descenders goes to the descender height and that your capitals don't go past the cap height. That's only for the lowercase ascenders going up to that final line over there. I was rushing mine, so I need to go back, and you should go back as well and double check every single letter to make sure that it's nice in place. You want to make sure that your letter, you're dragging that to the bottom left corner down here, that locks. And for all of these over here,
It's time we talk about side bearings. There are left and right side bearings, and they are equally important as designing and drawing the characters and perfecting them in Illustrator, because it's essentially how close or how far the letters are together. Think of this as the kerning. You can click Advanced Width, and it'll automatically kind of close off the right bearing, press right against your letter. And that's a quick and easy way to do it. But typically in type design, there are a lot more, there's a lot more attention applied to the bearings. Side bearings are not usually 0 or close to 0. A good rule of thumb is to start off at 50, and you can play around and base how close or how far your bearings should be, essentially by going, if we click Page, and then you click Live Preview, we can type in the text over here, and we can see exactly how close or how far these letters are together. So we can say, that looks about right to me, or if there's any changes, we can go back, can adjust our bearings accordingly to make a difference. Of course, this is a design decision. The space between characters is almost as important as character shapes themselves in terms of readability. So starting with some side bearings, going back and forth between Live Preview will really help with readability. Drawing the actual shapes on paper will be only a short amount of time for the overall project. Getting a font to look good, for the most part, is going to be in these final tweaks, playing with the spacing, the bearings, and any final decisions for your shapes, and practicing typing the letters in the live preview will give you a great understanding of how the font is going to be in its final end result.
One last bit I forgot to tell you guys. Let's go over to the space, and as you can see, it's just a straight line for our space. So we need to make sure that this offers a blank space in between by bumping up the advanced width. What I'm going to do, instead of just clicking these numbers randomly, let's go back to, I don't know, for example, the letter H, and let's see how far that is. It's at 785. So let's just recycle that number over here. 785, click enter. Now we have some space. Okay, you guys, so we're getting to a pretty exciting part. Everything's been double checked over. Okay, now let's do file, export OTF. My clever font name's over here. Double click that. And it's going to let us install it just like we install any other font that we downloaded from online. So to submit the project, let's take a look at the past examples. Typically what I've had students do is on the very top left, at the top over here is your font name, the official name of the font. This one's called Chrome Hearts. And then in the middle is the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. You can also check any of these sentences over here. That works as well. In the bottom right, font design by student name, graphic design at CCHS, and give me the date. Let's go into Photoshop and click new file. And we're going to do print. We'll customize the inches. Let's do a height of 19 by a width of 13. 300 resolution, pixels, RGB, everything's good over here. Click create. Command R to open up the rulers. Let's click view. Let's see, guides. Let's see here, new guide layout. What if we just do margins, check margins on, turn columns off. Do 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch and click OK. All right, now we'll drag a text box from the top left margin and we'll click your font name here. Let's highlight that and find my clever font name. And we'll bump this up. And then let's make a new text box at the bottom right. Let's do that bottom right. So we'll write justify. Mr. Sandoval, what else do I have? Graphic design CCHS, 12, 20, 20, 25. And then the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And like I said, you can also take a look at these other options over here. But I'll keep it simple. Let's center this one. Make sure there's a space, and let's make it look nice and tidy. Increase the size, because what we're really doing with this is we're showing off the characters that we created. Let's get this out of the way. I want to drag another guideline from the ruler and see if it snaps to the middle, and it gives me an idea of where the center's supposed to be for this. Alright, let's say we're happy with our setup in Photoshop. Click File, Save a Copy. We'll save this on your computer. And this is your final font submission. Export that as 12 quality as a JPEG. Your final font submission is this .jpeg. and it's this .otf file. I want both of these two submitted to Schoology for your final. Guys, I hope this was a super helpful and insightful tutorial on creating fonts. I definitely did not go over all of the options that you have in GlyphrStudio, and by no means am I saying that what I created is perfect, but I hope that it's good enough to get you started if it's the first time you've ever made a font. Let me know what you think, if this tutorial is helpful, if there's any other tips that you feel are necessary for a first-time font designer. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the cool font designs that you guys have come up with. Good luck.